They said the crown was never meant for hands like hers. Forged in the ashes of a dying kingdom, Eira, the blacksmith's daughter, walked through the trial of flames and lived. The fire that should have consumed her chose her instead. Now, the old lords whisper of her as a curse. The people speak her name as a promise, and the world watches to see whether she build a new age or burn with the old one. What if the fire that makes a queen also unravels her humanity? And this is where her story begins, the story of the Forged Queen.
The sun dipped low behind the jagged peaks of the volcanic kingdom of Eira, casting the sky in molten hues of red and gold. Rivers of lava snaked lazily through the cracked earth, their incandescent glow illuminating the darkening landscape with a fierce, otherworldly light. The air was thick with the scent of sulfur and ash, a constant reminder of the restless fire beneath the kingdom's surface. In this land forged by flame and stone, the ancient rite that had shaped rulers for centuries was about to unfold once more, the trial of flames. Within the sturdy stone walls of a modest forge nestled near the kingdom's outskirts, Eira wiped sweat from her brow, her hands steady despite the heat. Sparks flew as her hammer struck glowing metal, each rhythmic clang a testament to her resilience and skill. Her fiery red hair clung damp to her suit's streaked skin, and her bright amber eyes reflected the flickering flames dancing in the hearth. To most, she was the blacksmith's daughter, a commoner whose life was bound to the forge's glow. But within her burned a spirit as fierce as the fires that shaped Eira itself. Her father, Garrick, stood nearby, his broad shoulders silhouetted against the forge's light. His hands, calloused and strong, bore the marks of years spent shaping metal and molding his daughter's character. "Steady now," he advised, his voice low but firm. "The fire listens to those who respect it." Eira nodded, focusing on the metal before her. The forge was more than a place of labor. It was where she found solace and strength. The heat was a familiar companion, its warmth a steady pulse beneath the chaos of the world beyond. Meanwhile, in the heart of Eira's capital, the grand hall buzzed with a mixture of excitement and tension. Nobles draped in silks embroidered with ember motifs whispered among themselves, their eyes fixed on the sacred fire burning at the hall's center. The trial of flames was more than tradition, it was the kingdom's soul. For centuries, rulers had been chosen by walking through this fire, tested by its consuming embrace. Only those of true noble blood had ever survived unscathed, their lineage as pure and unyielding as the flames themselves. As the appointed hour approached, the hall grew silent. The high priestess raised her arms, chanting words lost to time, her voice weaving through the crackling roar of the flames. One by one, candidates stepped forward, their faces masks of resolve and fear. Each entered the fire, their bodies swallowed by the inferno, only to emerge if deemed worthy. None had ever failed to bear the mark of fire until now. When Eira's name was called, the hall erupted in murmurs and disbelief. Whispers of a blacksmith's daughter being chosen echoed like wildfire among the noble houses. She stepped forward, her heart pounding, the weight of every eye upon her. The fire surged, a living entity eager to judge. She took a breath, recalling her father's words and the countless hours at the forge. Then, with steady steps, she walked into the trial of flames. The heat licked at her skin, intense and unrelenting, yet the fire parted around her as if recognizing something beyond blood and birthright. Her amber eyes shone brighter than ever, reflecting the dancing flames as she emerged, untouched and triumphant. A stunned silence fell over the grand hall, broken only by the crackling fire and the pounding of Eira's own heart. The kingdom had been shaken to its core. The ancient tradition was broken, and a new chapter in Eira's story had begun, one written not by blood, but by fire itself. As the murmurs swelled into shouts and questions, Eira's gaze drifted to the shadows where her father stood, pride and worry etched into his features. She was no longer just a blacksmith's daughter. She was a beacon of hope, and a spark of rebellion in a kingdom fogged in flame. But the path ahead would be fraught with peril, and the fires of destiny were only just beginning to ignite. The Rites of Fire had chosen their unexpected champion, and the kingdom of Eira would never be the same again. Outside the hall, the volcanic winds whispered secrets only the flames could understand. Eira's footsteps echoed on the stone as she retreated from the gathering crowd, her mind a tempest of emotions. The heat still clung to her skin, a reminder of the trial she had endured, but beneath the shock and awe, a flicker of doubt gnawed quietly. What did this mean for her, for Eira, and for the legacy of those who had ruled before? In the distance, the volcano rumbled softly, as if acknowledging the upheaval unfolding below. The ember crown awaited, heavy with expectation and danger. And Eira, the blacksmith's daughter turned chosen ruler, was ready to face the fire that would shape her fate. The kingdom held its breath, and the flames whispered, "Begin." The volcanic winds whispered ominously across the jagged peaks of Eira as dawn struggled to break through the ash-laden sky. In the heart of the kingdom, where rivers of molten lava traced glowing scars across the earth, the news of Eira's selection by the flames spread like wildfire, igniting embers of hope and sparks of rebellion alike. Inside the blacksmith's forge, the heat was a familiar comfort to Eira. The roar of the fire and the steady clang of hammer on anvil were the rhythms of her life. But today, even these sounds seemed hollow against the storm raging within her. She stood motionless, the coarse leather apron heavy on her soot-streaked skin, her fiery red hair tangled from restless nights. Her amber eyes, usually so steady, flickered with uncertainty as she traced the faint outline of the birthmark on her wrist, a delicate shape resembling a flame, its edges blurred like smoke. "You reawake," a voice said softly behind her. Thane's presence filled the small room, his broad shoulders and dark hair a reassuring contrast to the flickering firelight. Eira turned slowly, managing a wary smile. "It's too early for doubts, Thane." He shook his head, stepping closer. "Never too early when the kingdom's fate hangs in the balance. People are talking, whispering. They don't see you as their queen." She swallowed the lump in her throat. "Neither do I." Thane's gaze was steady, his quick, guarded smile a balm to her fraying nerves. "Then you'll have to show them why they should." Outside, the courtyard buzzed with uneasy murmurs. Noble houses, long accustomed to ruling through bloodlines and ancient pacts, found themselves unsettled by the blacksmith's daughter chosen by the trial of flames. Lady Scylla, the proud heir of House Varen, prowled the halls with icy disdain, her sharp eyes cold as the mountain air. Her challenges were not whispered but spoken aloud in court, her voice dripping with contempt. A commoner crowned by fire. "Preposterous," she declared during a tense gathering. "We must protect the kingdom from such folly." The room rippled with murmurs of agreement and dissent, factions forming like cracks in the volcanic rock. Amidst the turmoil, a different kind of light flickered in the grand hall where Lady Myron awaited. Draped in flowing robes that shimmered faintly with silver threads, her hair a cascade of silver that caught the torchlight, she radiated a calm authority. Her eyes, glowing softly as if reflecting the very essence of flame, fixed on Eira with a mixture of expectation and compassion. "The trial of flames is more than mere tradition," Lady Myron intoned, her voice steady and enigmatic. "It chooses not only by blood but by spirit. The fire speaks to those who listen." Eira listened intently, the words stirring something deep within her, a fragile hope that her connection to the flames was not a mistake, but a calling. Yet as night fell over Eira, the shadows lengthened with doubt and fear. Eira retreated to the forge once more, seeking solace in the dancing flames. The heat kissed her skin, the crackling fire whispering secrets only she could hear. Her fingers traced the birthmark again, the mysterious emblem her mother had left behind, a silent testament to a lineage shrouded in mystery. Was she truly worthy? The question echoed louder than the roar of the volcano itself. Thane's footsteps approached, steady and sure. Whatever comes, you won't face it alone. Eira met his gaze, the ember of determination kindling in her amber eyes. Then I'll learn to walk through the fire, not just survive it. Outside, the kingdom held its breath, caught between the flames of tradition and the promise of change. The embers of doubt burned hot, but within Eira, a spark of fierce resolve began to glow, ready to ignite a new destiny. The great hall of Vera's court was a cavernous space, echoing with the murmur of voices and the crackle of countless torches. Crimson banners emblazoned with the emblem of a blazing crown hung from the stone walls, their edges flickering in the wavering light. The air was thick with the scent of smoke and heated stone, a constant reminder of the volcano that loomed beyond the city's walls. Eira stepped forward, her heart pounding in her chest, as she crossed the threshold into the chamber where the kingdom's nobles gathered. Her fiery red hair, streaked with soot from the forge, caught the torchlight and seemed to blaze with its own life. Her bright amber eyes scanned the crowd, meeting cold gazes veiled with suspicion, disbelief, and barely concealed disdain. This was her first court gathering since the Trial of Flames had chosen her, and she felt every inch the outsider she was proclaimed to be. The nobles, draped in silks of deep reds, blacks, and golds, whispered among themselves, casting sidelong glances at the blacksmith's daughter, who dared to claim a throne steeped in centuries of noble bloodline tradition. Eira's hands clenched at her sides, the memory of her father's steady forge hammer steadying her nerves. She had survived the flames that no noble had touched for generations, but now she faced a trial of a different kind, one of politics, power, and public scrutiny. The heavy silence was shattered by a sharp voice cutting through the murmurs. Can we truly accept an upstart as our ruler? Lady Sella's words rang out, her voice cold and clear. The noble hair stood tall, her dark hair pinned back with rubies that gleamed like embers, her eyes icy and unforgiving. The flames have always chosen from noble bloodlines. To accept this, commoner would be to unravel the very fabric of our kingdom. A ripple of agreement spread through the hall, some voices louder than others. Eira's cheeks burned, not from shame but from raw anger and frustration. She swallowed hard, stepping forward to meet Lady Sila's gaze. The flames do not lie, Eira said, her voice steady despite the tremor she felt inside. They chose me for a reason. I will prove my worth not by blood, but by my deeds. Murmurs of dissent and disbelief followed her words. Lady Sila's lips curled into a scornful smile. We shall see, blacksmith's daughter. The trial is far from over. Later, away from the prying eyes of the court, Lady Myron invited Eira into a quiet chamber bathed in the warm glow of a stone hearth. The fire's light danced across the silver-haired priestess's serene face, her eyes reflecting the flames with an almost unnatural glow. She laid before Eira a collection of ancient scrolls and tomes, their pages brittle with age. The Trial of Flames is more than a test of birthright, Lady Myron explained, her voice soft yet filled with conviction. It is a covenant between the fire and the chosen, a communion that tests spirit, will, and heart. The flames judge not only blood but the essence within. Eira traced a finger over a faded illustration of the ember crown, a circlet wreathed in flickering fire. I never knew there was more to it, she murmured, a mix of wonder and unease swirling within her. Few do, Lady Myron replied. But the fire's whispers hold truths that can strengthen you if you listen. Encouraged by this revelation, Eira returned to the forge where her journey had begun. The heat embraced her like an old friend as she stood before the roaring flames. Tentatively, she reached out a hand, feeling the fire's pulse, a living thing that responded to her touch. It was both frightening and exhilarating. Her amber eyes reflected the dancing embers as she whispered, "Teach me." The fire seemed to flicker in acknowledgement, and for the first time, Eira felt the stirrings of a power that could shape her destiny. As the forge's warmth seeped into her skin, so too did a fragile hope kindle within her heart. The path ahead was fraught with peril and doubt. But she was no longer merely a blacksmith's daughter, she was the flame's chosen, and her trial had only just begun. Outside, the winds carried whispers through the ash-laden streets of Eira. The court's murmurs grew louder, the factions stirring like restless embers ready to ignite. Eira's eyes hardened with resolve. She would face the whispers, the challenges, and the flames. For in the ashes of doubt, a new fire was kindling, and it would not be so easily extinguished. As the hall emptied and shadows lengthened, a single question burned brighter than the torches. Could the flames truly choose a commoner? And if so, what would that mean for the kingdom of Eira? The forge blazed like a living beast, its molten heart spilling waves of heat that curled and danced in the air, wrapping around Eira like a fierce embrace. She stood before it, muscles taut, her hands steady despite the sweltering furnace that threatened to sap her strength. Each hammer strike against the glowing metal rang out, a rhythmic drumbeat echoing through the workshop, a song of resilience carved from fire and steel. Her suit's streaked skin bore the marks of countless hours spent shaping iron, yet it was not merely the craft of blacksmithing that forged her spirit, it was the fire itself. The lifeblood of Eira that coursed through her veins, awakening something fierce and untamed. Garrick watched from the shadows, pride and worry etched into every line of his rugged face. "Steady, Eira," he said, his voice low but firm. "The metal bends to your will, but you must not bend yourself." Eira paused, wiping sweat from her brow, amber eyes flickering with determination. "The fire chooses, Father, but it is my will that must wield it." Outside the forge, the kingdom whispered. Rumors had begun to swirl like ash on the wind, whispers of a blacksmith's daughter chosen by fire, a rat among lions, unworthy and unknown. It was said her bloodline was a mystery, a shadow that could unravel the delicate balance of power. But none of that mattered here, in the blistering heat, where fire did not lie. Later, in the temple chamber fragrant with incense and glowing softly with torchlight, Lady Myron stood beside Eira, her silver hair cascading like a river of moonlight. The fire priestess's eyes shimmered with ancient knowledge, reflecting the flickering flames that danced in the hearth. "The trial of flames is more than mere survival," Lady Myron intoned, her voice a melodic whisper. "It is a covenant between the chosen and the fire itself. The flames test not only your body but your soul." Eira knelt, hands hovering over the embers, feeling the warmth seep into her bones. "I feel it," she breathed. "The fire answers to me, but I do not yet understand its language." Lady Myron smiled gently. "That understanding will come with patience and trust. The fire is both a weapon and a guide. You must learn to listen, not just command." The next day, under a bruised twilight sky, the courtyard became a battleground of steel and will. Thane, broad-shouldered and quick with a guarded smile, circled Eira as they sparred. The clash of their swords rang sharp and clear, each strike testing her reflexes and resolve. "Keep your guard up," Thane advised, stepping back to assess her form. "A ruler must be as much strategist as warrior. Strength alone won't win this war." Eira wiped blood from a shallow cut on her cheek, her breath ragged but steady. "Then teach me to be both." As the sun dipped below the horizon, the shadows lengthened in the grand halls of Eira. Noble eyes whispered behind fans and veils, their glances sharp and uncertain. Lady Scylla, draped in silks that caught the light like molten gold, watched Eira's progress with thinly veiled contempt. "A blacksmith's daughter," she hissed to a nearby lord, pretending to command fire and throne. The flames were mistaken this time, but Eira's resolve only deepened. The fire that had chosen her was not a fickle flame to be snuffed out by gossip or scorn. It was a roaring inferno, a forge where she would temper not only metal but her own destiny. Night fell, and Eira returned to the forge, the warmth of the fire a balm against the chill of doubt. She stared into the heart of the blaze, seeking answers in its chaotic dance. Somewhere beyond the smoke and shadows lay the path she must forge, a path of flame and steel, of courage and sacrifice. The kingdom will not bend easily, she murmured to the fire, but neither will I, and with that vow, the first sparks of a new era blazed to life. The ashen court was alive with murmurs and shifting shadows, the air thick with the scent of burning torches and polished stone. As Eira stepped through the heavy oaken doors, the murmurs rippled into a hush, all eyes turning to the blacksmith's daughter, who now stood before them, chosen by fire, yet still an enigma to the noble houses. Her bright amber eyes scanned the sea of faces, wary, skeptical, some openly hostile. She felt the weight of centuries of tradition pressing down on her, the legacy of bloodlines that she had shattered by mere survival. The hall was magnificent, its vaulted ceilings carved with swirling patterns reminiscent of flames licking upwards. Tapestries hung from the walls, depicting past rulers walking the trial of flames, their faces serene and regal. Eira's own suit streaked skin, and simple tunic marked her as an outsider in this world of silk and steel. Taking a deep breath, she stepped forward to speak. Noble lords and ladies of Eira, her voice rang clear, but carried a tremor only she could feel. I stand before you not as one born to rule, but as one chosen by the fire itself. I ask for your trust, so that together we may bring peace and strength to our kingdom. A ripple of polite applause stirred, but it was quickly drowned out by a cold, cutting voice. Trust. Lady Scylla rose with the grace of a queen, but the venom of a serpent. Her silver hair gleamed under the torchlight, her grey eyes sharp and unforgiving. Trust is earned, blacksmith's daughter, not granted by pyres and flames. How can we place the fate of Eira in the hands of one so inexperienced and unknown? The hall fell silent, the tension thickening like smoke before a wildfire. Murmurs erupted into whispers, and then into open discussion, some nobles nodding in agreement with Lady Scylla's scorn. Eira's cheeks flamed, but not with fire. Shame and anger mingled within her. Thane, standing close by, caught her eye and gave a subtle nod, a silent promise of support. Lady Myron, seated nearby in robes of deep crimson, offered a faint smile, her eyes glowing softly in the flickering light. She whispered, "The trial is just beginning." Lady Scylla continued, her voice rising, "The flames do not choose commoners. The trial of flames has always been a sacred tradition of noble blood, a lineage proven by fire and blood. Your claim threatens to unravel the very fabric of our kingdom's order." Eira pressed her hands together, gathering her resolve. "The flames chose me, and I will prove that worth is not born of blood alone. I seek peace, not war, to unite Eira's people for a future beyond old grudges." The reply was a chorus of skeptical murmurs and a few dissenting voices, but the damage was done. The Ashen Court was divided, and Eira found herself at the center of a storm she had only begun to understand. Later, in a shadowed chamber behind the court, a clandestine meeting convened. Nobles cloaked in dark velvets and chainmail whispered urgently around a low-burning brazier. Plans and counterplans wove through the smoke-filled room like serpents. A traitor in Eira's ranks was hinted at, and alliances shifted with the flicker of torchlight. The fire's warmth belied the cold ambitions that simmered beneath. Back in her quarters, Eira sat alone before a small forge fire, its amber glow dancing over her weary face. The comforting crackle of burning coals was a stark contrast to the cold sting of courtly rejection. She traced the outline of her birthmark, a flickering flame etched on her wrist, and allowed herself a moment of vulnerability. "This is only the beginning," she whispered to the fire, "and I will not falter." Her gaze hardened, the embers reflecting in her determined eyes. The trial of flames had chosen her, but now the true test of her spirit had begun. The Ashen Court was no place for the faint-hearted, and Eira knew the path ahead would be fraught with peril. But with every spark that kindled within her, she found the strength to face the rising darkness. As the night deepened, so did the shadows around her, and just beyond the castle walls, The fires of rebellion quietly flickered to life. The fading light of day seeped through the small, soot-darkened windows of the forge, casting elongated shadows that danced alongside the embers crackling in the hearth. Eira sat quietly, her hands resting on her lap, though they trembled slightly from the chill of the evening air. Her eyes, ever reflective of the flames she so often solace in, were fixed intently on the birthmark curling like a delicate flame along her left wrist. It had always been a quiet mystery to her, a mark she had borne since infancy, one that her father never spoke of but had touched reverently on rare occasions. Tonight, the weight of the kingdom's unrest pressed heavily on her chest. The whispers questioning her legitimacy, the doubt etched onto the faces of nobles and commoners alike, all seemed to converge in that small, flickering mark. "What secrets do you hold?" she murmured. The forge's heat wrapped around her like a protective cloak, yet inside, a storm of uncertainty and hope churned. Her reverie was broken by the soft, measured footsteps of Lady Myron entering the forge. The fire priestess moved with a grace that belied the burden she carried, her silver hair catching the amber light and shimmering like molten silver. "Eira," she greeted softly, her voice a soothing balm amidst the chaos. "There are truths you must know, truths buried deep within our history even the noblest fear to speak aloud." Eira looked up, curiosity and wariness mingling in her gaze. "What truths?" Lady Myron gestured toward a small, worn satchel resting on a nearby table. From it, she produced several ancient scrolls, their parchment fragile but inscribed with the meticulous hand of a bygone era. Unfurling them carefully, she began to recount forgotten chapters of the Trial of Flames. The fire does not choose solely by bloodline. It tests the soul, the spirit, the very essence of those who dare to claim the Ember Crown. For centuries, this truth was overshadowed by the rigid traditions of noble supremacy. But the flames are impartial, they choose who they will, regardless of heritage. Eira's heart quickened. Had the fire chosen her not in spite of her unknown lineage, but because of something deeper within her? The notion unsettled the foundation of everything she and the kingdom had believed. Meanwhile, far from the forge's comforting blaze, Thane stood alone on a jagged cliff that overlooked the vast volcanic plains of Eira. The wind tugged at his dark hair and cloak, carrying with it the faint, ever-present scent of sulfur and ash. His jaw tightened as memories flickered unbidden, his family's fall from grace, the whispered accusations, the endless struggle to reclaim lost honor. He clenched his fists, the knuckles whitening against the biting wind. His loyalty to Eira was unwavering, yet the shadows of his past gnawed at him, threatening to fracture his resolve. Could he stand firmly beside her when the ghosts of his lineage demanded otherwise? The distant rumble of the volcano echoed the turmoil within him, a reminder that the land itself was restless, much like the hearts of those who lived upon it. Back within the dim light of the castle's council chamber, Eira faced a gathering of her closest advisors. The room was bathed in the warm glow of torches, their flickering flames casting long shadows that seemed to mimic the doubts and fears swirling in her mind. Yet as eyes turned toward her, seeking guidance and assurance, she felt a fierce, unyielding flame ignite within. Drawing a steadying breath, she spoke with a voice both gentle and commanding. "I do not know all the answers, nor the full story of my heritage. But I know that the fire chose me, and with that choice comes a responsibility I will not shirk. We stand at the brink of a new era, one not defined by blood alone, but by courage, wisdom, and the will to protect Eira." Murmurs rippled through the chamber, some of hope, others of skepticism. Yet in that moment, Eira realized that the path ahead would be forged not just by the flames of the trial, but by the strength she found within herself and those who stood with her. As the night deepened, secrets unveiled and loyalties tested, the kingdom of Eira held its breath. The great hall of Eira's palace was thick with the oppressive heat of flickering torches and murmuring nobles. The molten rock walls seemed to pulse with the kingdom's restless heartbeat, reflections of flickering firelight dancing across faces carved with suspicion and unease. Eira moved cautiously, her amber eyes scanning the crowd, every shadow a potential threat. She felt the familiar comfort of heat against her skin, a steady reminder of the trial she had survived. Yet tonight, that same fire seemed a distant memory, replaced by a cold, creeping dread. Thane walked at her side, his presence a shield as much as a comfort. His broad shoulders caught the gaze of many, a silent warning to those who might harbor ill intent. Yet even with him close, Eira's heart thrummed wildly as whispers slithered through the gathering whispers of doubt, of bloodlines, and of the blacksmith's daughter who dared claim the Ember Crown. The crowd's hum was abruptly shattered by a sharp, metallic clang, the unmistakable ring of steel striking steel. In an instant, chaos erupted. From the shadows near the eastern alcove, a figure lunged forward, a dagger gleaming in the half-light, aimed directly at Eira's throat. Time seemed to slow as Thane reacted, his sword slicing through the air with practiced precision. The assailant's blade was deflected, sparks flying from the impact, drawing gasps and cries from the startled assembly. Eira stumbled back, heart pounding, her fiery hair a wild halo around her soot-streaked face. Thane's sword pressed against the attacker's wrist, forcing the dagger to clatter harmlessly to the stone floor. The would-be assassin snarled, eyes wild with desperation, before being restrained by palace guards who surged forward. Yet the damage was done, the court's fragile calm shattered like glass. In the aftermath, as the guards secured the intruder and questioned the startled nobles, Eira retreated with Thane to the quiet sanctuary of the palace gardens beneath the volcanic night sky. The stars shimmered faintly, distant and cold, as a gentle breeze carried the scent of ash and sulfur. Here, away from prying eyes, Eira allowed herself a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. "You saved my life," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know what I'd do without you." Thane's dark eyes met hers, a flicker of vulnerability breaking through his usual guarded demeanor. "I'll always be here. For you, Eira, no matter what comes." Their shared silence spoke volumes, a bond forged in danger and tempered by unspoken fears. Yet even as trust deepened between them, the specter of betrayal loomed large. Back within the palace walls, the political storm brewed with renewed ferocity. Lord Kaelan Voss, tall and imposing, stepped forward in the throne room, his cold steel blue eyes sweeping the assembled nobles. His voice, clear and commanding, cut through the tension like a blade. "This kingdom cannot survive under the rule of an impostor," Kaelan declared, his words echoing off the stone. "Eira, the blacksmith's daughter, is a usurper chosen not by right, but by chance. The trial of flames is sacred, yes, but it has never before chosen one without noble blood. To accept her reign is to invite chaos and ruin." Murmurs rippled through the crowd, some filled with fear, others with reluctant agreement. Kaelan's public denunciation was a calculated strike, rallying those loyal to tradition and igniting the fires of dissent. In a quiet chamber lit by torchlight, Lady Myron watched the unfolding turmoil with a heavy heart. Her silver hair shimmered as she traced ancient symbols on brittle parchment, the flickering flames casting dancing shadows across her thoughtful face. The fragile piece she had worked so hard to preserve now teetered on the brink of collapse. "The flames have chosen, yet the kingdom burns," she murmured. "We must find a way to guide Eira through this darkness, or all will be lost." The assassination attempt was no isolated act of violence. It was a declaration of war cloaked in smoke and mirrors. Trust was a scarce commodity, and Eira knew that to survive, she would need to uncover the conspirators hidden among friends and foes alike. With Thane at her side and Lady Myron's counsel, she braced herself for the battles ahead, not only of sword and flame, but of hearts and minds. As the night deepened, the shadows lengthened, and the kingdom of Eira stood at a perilous crossroads. The embers of rebellion glowed brighter, threatening to consume all in their path. Yet within Eira, a fierce spark burned, a resolve born of fire and forged in trial. ready to challenge fate itself. The days to come would demand everything she had and more. The smoke of treachery was thick, but Eira's eyes held the steady glow of determination. In the court of flames, only the strongest would survive, and the true trial was only just beginning. The morning sun pierced the ash-gray sky of Eira, casting a muted glow over the training yard where Eira stood alone. The air was thick with the scent of sulfur and molten rock, a constant reminder of the kingdom's fiery heart. Before her, a towering bonfire crackled and spat sparks into the heavy air, its flames licking hungrily at the cold morning mist. Eira's breath came steady and measured, her amber eyes fixed intently on the dancing fire. She extended her palms forward, feeling the heat surge toward her, the flames responding as though alive, flickering, swirling, hesitant yet willing to obey. This was no ordinary fire, and this was no ordinary test. The trial of control was a grueling rite, designed not only to prove a candidate's survival but their mastery over the elemental force that defined Eira itself. The court had demanded this from her, the blacksmith's daughter, who had shattered tradition by surviving the trial of flames. Now, she had to prove that she could wield fire with purpose, not merely endure it. Steady Eira, Lady Myron's voice echoed softly from the shadows, her silver hair catching the flickering light of torches lining the training ground. The fire priestess moved with a grace that belied her years, her eyes glowing faintly, as though reflecting the souls of the fire spirits she communed with. Feel the fire, but do not let it consume you. Let it flow through you like a river of light and heat. Eira inhaled deeply, recalling the countless hours spent in her father's forge, hammering glowing metal until it bent to her will. Garrick's rough hands and patient teachings were etched into her memory, the steady rhythm of the hammer, the heat that promised transformation, and the quiet strength that came from shaping something enduring from raw chaos. "I can't fail," she whispered, the weight of the crown pressing down on her shoulders. "Not now, not ever." The flames danced higher, as if sensing her resolve. Slowly, the fire stretched tendrils toward her fingers, gentle at first, then warmer until a ring of flame wreathed her hands. Eira's skin tingled, not with pain but with an exhilarating power she was only beginning to understand. She flexed her fingers, and the fire pulsed in response, coiling and crackling under her command. A rare smile flickered across Lady Myron's face. Well done. But the trial was far from over. Later, in the quiet sanctuary of the temple chambers, Eira sat cross-legged on the stone floor before a small altar of glowing embers. Lady Myron chanted softly, her voice weaving ancient words lost to many but preserved in the temple's hallowed halls. The air shimmered with heat and magic, the fire spirits stirring as Eira closed her eyes and reached inward. Visions flickered behind her eyelids, scorching lava rivers, burning skies, and a figure cloaked in flame, a symbol of destiny and sacrifice. The meditation left her both drained and emboldened. The trial was not merely physical. It was spiritual, a crucible for the soul. And Eira's soul burned brighter than she had dared hope. Outside, the sharp clang of steel rang through the air. Thane, ever vigilant and protective, was waiting. The two met beside a bubbling lava flow, the ground beneath them humming with heat. Their swords clashed in a dance of sparks and sweat, each strike a test of skill and trust. Thane's guarded smile softened as he nodded approvingly. "You ready?" "I hope so," Eira replied, wiping sweat from her brow. "But the court will be less forgiving. Political battles were as fierce as those fought with blades." Rumors of her unknown lineage spread like wildfire, and noble houses whispered of conspiracies. Lady Sila's scornful eyes haunted every gathering. Yet with each trial, each moment of mastery, Eira forged a new path, one not dictated by bloodline but by will and fire. In the forge, Garrick's rough hands steadied her as she hammered glowing metal, the rhythmic pounding a balm against the chaos surrounding her. "Remember," he said gruffly, "fire can destroy, but it also creates. It's not just about power, it's about control." Eira's gaze met her father's, and in that moment, she understood the truth of his words. The trial of control was not just a test of strength, but a declaration of purpose. As twilight descended, Eira stood once more before the bonfire, the flames now responding with a fierce loyalty. She had crossed the threshold from uncertain girl to determined leader. But the fight for Veira's heart and soul was just beginning. The flames whispered their secrets, and Eira listened, ready to shape the future with fire in her hands and courage in her heart. Yet, as the shadows lengthened and the night deepened, a cold thought lingered at the edge of her mind. Would control be enough to quell the storm rising within the kingdom? Or would the fire she commanded consume her as it had so many before? The trial of fire was far from over. The great stone circle, nestled at the heart of Eira's capital, was alive with the crackling roar of flames. Braziers arranged meticulously around the perimeter cast a flickering glow over the jagged volcanic rock walls, their shadows dancing like restless spirits in the heat-thick air. Nobles and commoners alike gathered, the murmur of their voices blending with the ever-present hiss of lava flowing unseen beneath the city. Eira stood at the center, her fiery red hair pulled back tightly, flames licking gently from her fingertips, as if responding to her very will. The trial of control was more than a ceremony. It was a crucible that would test her mastery over the elemental fire that had chosen her. To succeed was to claim her right to the Ember Crown. To fail meant disgrace or worse. She inhaled deeply, the scent of burning wood and molten rock filling her senses, anchoring her amidst the sea of watchful eyes. Her amber eyes, bright and fierce, swept across the assembly. Among them she saw familiar faces: Thane, his broad frame tense, eyes sharp and unwavering in their support; Lady Myron, serene yet vigilant, her silver hair glowing softly in the torchlight; and across the circle, the unmistakable figure of Lord Kaelan Voss. His cold steel blue eyes locked onto her with a mixture of disdain and calculation, dark hair streaked with grey falling over his furrowed brow. The High Priestess's voice rang out, clear and commanding, "Let the trial commence." Flames surged from the braziers, rising higher and swirling in intricate patterns. Eira raised her hands, welcoming the fire as it curled around her fingers, dancing without burning. Years of training, both physical and spiritual, culminated in this moment. She summoned every ounce of her will to command the flames, to bend them to her control. The crowd held its breath, watching the girl from the forge wield the very element that had long been the birthright of noble bloodlines. Suddenly, a sharp flare erupted, flames bursting unpredictably and scorching her left arm. A sharp sting seared through her skin, and she winced, grit pressing her teeth together to choke back a cry. The heat was fierce, relentless, but Eira's resolve was fiercer. She tightened her grip on the fire, refusing to yield. The murmurs among the nobles shifted. Some exchanged doubtful glances, others stared in awe at her unyielding spirit. Is this the strength of a common blacksmith's daughter? Lady Sila's voice cut through the crowd like a blade, dripping with scorn. She stood among the nobles, her sharp eyes gleaming with hostility as she whispered poison to those near her. But Eira did not falter. Her amber eyes blazed with determination as the flames curled higher, responding to her will, forming shapes of swirling embers and glowing sparks. The trial was not merely about survival, it was about mastery. And despite the searing pain in her arm, she was mastering the fire. As the flames began to recede, the crowd erupted into a mixture of applause and murmured disbelief. Some noble houses, traditionally loyal to Lord Kaelan, seethed quietly, their resentment simmering beneath polite applause. Others, inspired by Eira's display of strength and spirit, whispered words of hope. Lord Kaelan's gaze darkened, his jaw clenched as he turned sharply on his heel, his voice low but venomous as he spoke to his closest advisors. This is a challenge to the order we have upheld for centuries. The flames may have chosen her, but the bloodline remains the true ruler. We will not let this usurper stand unchallenged. Outside the circle, Eira's breath was ragged as she lowered her arms. Her left arm throbbed fiercely, a fresh burn marking her skin, a painful reminder of the trial's cost. Thane was at her side in an instant, his broad hand steadying her with quiet concern. "You did it," he said softly, eyes reflecting pride and worry. "The court will never forget this day." Lady Myron approached, her silver hair catching the firelight as she placed a steadying hand on Eira's shoulder. "The flames have accepted you," she said quietly, her voice carrying the weight of ancient wisdom. "But so too have they warned us the path ahead will be as treacherous as this trial." Eira nodded, the weight of leadership settling more heavily on her shoulders. The trial of control was behind her, but the real battle was only beginning. The political tides were turning, and with Lord Kaelan rallying noble houses against her, the kingdom of Eira teetered on the brink of civil war. As the sun dipped below the volcanic peaks, casting long shadows across the scorched earth, Eira's amber eyes shone, with a fierce hope tempered by fear. The flames had chosen her now. She had to prove that she could wield their power not only to survive but to lead. And as the crowd dispersed, whispers of rebellion and allegiance spun through the night air like sparks ready to ignite. The kingdom held its breath, waiting to see if the Forge-born queen could shape a future from the ashes of tradition. The volcanic kingdom of Eira simmered with unrest, the air thick with ash and anticipation. From the highest battlements of the capital city, Eira gazed out over the restless masses gathered below, their faces a patchwork of hope, skepticism, and simmering anger. The once unshackable tradition of noble bloodline rule had fractured the kingdom's unity, and now, with Eira's unprecedented survival of the trial of flames, the delicate balance teetered dangerously. Eira's voice rang out, clear and unwavering despite the weight pressing upon her shoulders. "People of Eira," she began, her amber eyes catching the flickering torchlight, "we stand at a crossroads. The flames that chose me are not just a test of fire, but a call for change. I ask you to stand with me, not as nobles or commoners, but as one people bound by the fire that forged our land." Murmurs rippled through the crowd, some faces lighting with tentative hope, others narrowing with doubt. Among the nobles, Lady Seller's sharp glare cut through the gathering, her lips curled with disdain. Yet, among the common folk, there was a flicker of something new, a belief that perhaps power could rise beyond ancient bloodlines. Meanwhile, beneath the city's craggy streets, Thane gathered with loyal soldiers in a war room lined with maps scorched from years of volcanic ash. His broad shoulders bore the heavy mantle of protector. "We hold the eastern passes," he instructed, pointing to strategic choke points surrounded by rivers of cooled lava. "If we lose control here, the rebellion will spread like wildfire." His voice was steady, but the tension in the room was palpable. Each soldier understood the stakes. Failure meant not just defeat, but the unraveling of the kingdom itself. Thane's pragmatic approach contrasted with his personal loyalty to Eira, a bond forged in childhood and hardened by shared trials. Elsewhere, in the hallowed halls of the temple, Lady Myron knelt before an ancient altar, her silver hair cascading over her shoulders as her fingers traced the cryptic symbols etched into stone. Whispering the sacred incantations, she sought answers from the fire spirits themselves. The flames flickered wildly, shadows dancing across her face, revealing a mixture of resolve and unease. Her research had uncovered troubling links between the ancient fire rituals and the current political strife. The trial of flames, it seemed, was more than a mere test of endurance. It was entwined with forces that could either bind the kingdom together or tear it apart. Lady Myron's role as both advisor and priestess placed her at the heart of these revelations, her guidance crucial yet fraught with hidden risks. As night deepened, a clandestine meeting unfolded in the shadowed alleys of the capital. Cloaked figures murmured conspiracies, their voices low but urgent. Among them, nobles who once pledged loyalty to the old order plotted to ignite rebellion anew, their whispered threats echoing like the crackle of dry tinder. Outside, distant drums beat a steady rhythm, signaling the gathering storm of conflict. Back on the battlements, Eira's gaze hardened. She knew the path ahead would be perilous. The flames of rebellion were kindling, and her role as leader demanded sacrifices she had not yet imagined. Yet, amid the turmoil, she found a spark of hope, a chance to redefine what it meant to rule, not through birthright alone, but through courage, compassion, and unyielding will. Her voice lifted again, carrying over the restless crowd. We face darkness, yes, but also the dawn of a new era. Stand with me, and together we will forge a future worthy of the Ember Crown. As the crowd's response swelled a mixture of cheers, hesitant applause, and fearful whispers, Eira felt the weight of leadership settle more firmly upon her shoulders. The trial was far from over, and the flames of destiny burned hotter than ever. But she would meet them head-on for the kingdom, for her people, and for the promise of a united Veira. The night air carried the scent of smoke and molten rock, the distant rumble of the volcano, a steady reminder of the power beneath their feet. In this crucible of fire and fate, Eira's resolve was tested anew, her journey transforming from survival to stewardship, from trial to triumph. And as the first embers of rebellion flickered across the land, the kingdom held its breath, waiting for the flames to either consume or illuminate the path forward.
The chamber was alive with heat, the air thick and shimmering as the flames danced wildly around Eira. She stood at the center, the sacred fire pit before her crackling, its embers glowing bright orange and red, casting flickering shadows on the jagged volcanic stone walls. Her breath came steady, the rhythmic hiss of the fire a strange comfort to her ears. The heat kissed her skin, a sensation both painful and strangely soothing, like an old friend reminding her of the power she held within. Eira closed her eyes, focusing on the fire's warmth, drawing it into herself as Lady Myron had taught. The ritual was meant to deepen her connection to the flames, to awaken the power that had chosen her. At first, all she felt was the expected heat, the familiar crackle of burning wood and molten earth. But then, a sudden surge of energy coursed through her veins, a pulse that seemed to echo the heartbeat of Veira itself. Visions burst forth in her mind's eye, fiery scenes that felt more like memories than dreams. She saw a woman with hair like molten gold, standing at the edge of a lava flow, her hands raised as flames twirled obediently around her fingers. The woman's eyes met Eira's, filled with both sorrow and fierce determination. Eira realized it was her mother, a noble woman of a forgotten bloodline, long believed lost to history. The birthmark on Eira's wrist, a flame-shaped scar she had always thought a mere curiosity, suddenly gleamed with new meaning, a mark of the chosen, a symbol of a lineage intertwined with the elemental fire spirits that had guarded Veira since time immemorial. The revelation struck Eira like a bolt of lightning. Her heart thundered painfully, questions flooding her mind. Was she truly just a blacksmith's daughter, or something far greater? Was her survival of the trial of flames a mere accident, or the fulfillment of an ancient prophecy? The fire around her seemed to pulse with life, whispering truths she was only beginning to understand. Opening her eyes, Eira saw the flames flickering with renewed intensity, as if acknowledging her awakening. Yet, with this knowledge came a heavy weight, the burden of destiny, the expectations of a kingdom watching her every move, and the enemies waiting in the shadows. Later that evening, the sky above Veira glowed a deep crimson, the molten rivers carving their paths like veins of fire across the land. In the shadowed courtyard of the palace, Thane awaited her, his broad shoulders silhouetted against the fiery horizon. His dark hair was tousled, his usual quick smile replaced by a guarded seriousness. "I need to speak honestly," Thane said, his voice low but firm. "You know my family's history, how we fell from favor, how I've dreamed of restoring our name. When the flames chose you, I was torn. Part of me wanted to see someone from my own bloodline rise, Yet another part knows you are the key to Veira's future." Eira looked at him, sensing the turmoil beneath his words. "And where do your loyalties lie now?" she asked softly. He hesitated, then met her gaze. "With you. But it's not simple. I fear what our ambition might do to us both." The tension between them was palpable, two souls bound by a shared past and uncertain futures, each wrestling with their hopes and fears. That night, Lady Myron summoned Eira to the temple's inner sanctum. The air was thick with incense, the flicker of torchlight casting a sacred glow over the ancient stone carvings depicting flames that never died. Myron's silver hair shimmered softly, her eyes reflecting both wisdom and sorrow. "I have guarded the secrets of the trial for decades," Myron began, her voice steady yet laced with emotion. "The flames do not choose lightly. They seek a balance, one who can wield their power with both strength and compassion. But knowledge carries its own price." She revealed her own sacrifices, the loneliness of her role, and the burden of protecting the kingdom's fragile peace. Her story intertwined with Eira's newfound heritage, weaving a tapestry of duty, loss, and hope. Over the following days, Eira practiced tirelessly. Her hands, once roughened by the hammer and anvil, now coaxed small flames to life, shaping them with a newfound grace. Each flicker of fire was a test of her will, a challenge to master the volatile force within her. Doubts whispered at the edges of her mind, but she pushed them aside, drawing strength from the visions and the support of those who believed in her. Yet beyond the palace walls, unrest simmered. Rumors of rebellion, whispered threats from rival houses, and the ever-present shadow of Lord Kalen Voss loomed large. Eira knew the path ahead was fraught with danger. The flames within her were both a beacon and a warning, a reminder that her journey had only just begun. As the chapter closed, Eira stood once more before the sacred fire, her amber eyes reflecting the dancing flames. The future was uncertain, the stakes higher than ever. But within her burned a fierce determination to embrace her destiny, to challenge fate, and to become the ruler Veira desperately needed. The flames whispered secrets still hidden, and Eira was ready to listen. The council chamber was heavy with the scent of burning wax and smoked oak, the flickering torches casting long shadows that danced across the stone walls like restless spirits. Eira stood near the head of the oak table, her fiery hair catching the light, an ember of defiance amid the murmurs and shifting gazes. Before her, Lady Myron's silver hair shimmered softly, her voice steady despite the gravity of what she was about to reveal. "There are whispers in the wind," Lady Myron began, her eyes meeting Eira's with a knowing intensity. "Messages intercepted, alliances forged in shadow. Someone close to you feeds our enemies information." A hush fell over the gathered nobles and advisors. Eira's heart tightened, the weight of betrayal settling like ash in her chest. To be chosen by the flames was one trial. To survive the treachery of those sworn to her was another altogether. Thane stepped forward, his broad shoulders squared, his dark eyes scanning the room with a protective vigilance. "We will find this serpent," he declared, voice low but resolute. "No shadow can hide in the light of the fire." The council erupted into murmurs, some faces hardening with suspicion, others displaying thinly veiled relief. Alliances shifted palpably. A noble here pledged loyalty anew, while another exchanged a glance loaded with doubt. Eira felt the fragile threads of trust unraveling around her. Every whispered conversation, every sidelong glance felt like a spark threatening to ignite an inferno of mistrust. Later, in the solitude of the forge where her journey had begun, Eira found Thane waiting. The warmth from the dying embers painted his features in amber hues, his expression earnest as he spoke. "I stand with you, Eira," he said, voice a steady flame against the cold night. "No matter the shadows that fall, I will be your shield." Gratitude mingled with the ache of isolation. It was a comfort, but the truth lingered. The betrayal was real, and the cost of leadership was heavier than any heat she'd endured. That night, under a canopy of stars, Eira walked the volcanic ridge. The earth rumbled faintly beneath her boots, molten lava glowing like the pulse of the kingdom's heart. The fire whispered secrets only she could hear, ancient and wild. "Who can I trust?" she whispered to the wind. The flames answered with a crackle, a reminder that in Eira, as in life, fire could destroy and purify in equal measure. Eira's resolve hardened. She would uncover the traitor, rally her allies, and prove that the flames had chosen her for a reason, not just to rule, but to unite. The path ahead burned brightly, fraught with danger and uncertainty. But Eira was no stranger to fire. She would forge her future in its heat, no matter the cost. As dawn crept over the volcanic peaks, painting the sky with strokes of crimson and gold, Eira breathed deeply, ready to face the trials yet to come. "Let the flames reveal the truth," she vowed, stepping forward into the rising light. The kingdom's fate depended on it. The sky hung heavy with ash as Eira tightened the leather straps on her boots, the acrid scent of sulfur curling in her nostrils. Beside her, Lady Myron's silver hair shimmered faintly in the flickering light of their torches, her eyes reflecting a calm that Eira desperately sought to emulate. Ahead lay the jagged ascent to the heart of Eira's volcano, a place spoken of in whispered prayers and ancient songs, the sanctuary of the fire spirits. "Are you certain about this path?" Eira asked, her voice thick with a mixture of anticipation and unease. Lady Myron nodded, her gaze steady. "The fire does not choose lightly. To understand its will, you must face it not just as a trial of flesh, but as a communion of spirit. The heart of the volcano holds answers that even the trial of flames conceals." The journey was perilous. Each step upward was met with heat that seeped through their cloaks, the earth trembling beneath their feet as distant rumbles echoed like the heartbeat of the mountain itself. Eira's amber eyes scanned the molten rivulets weaving through the rocky crevices, their fiery glow casting eerie shadows that danced like specters around them. "Listen," Lady Myron whispered, pausing to place a hand against the warm stone. "The mountain speaks in silence." Eira closed her eyes, feeling the subtle vibrations beneath her palms. The air thrummed with an energy both ancient and alive, a force that stirred something deep within her, a flicker of recognition that transcended words. Deeper into the cavern, pools of molten lava shimmered like liquid suns. Here, the fire spirits were said to dwell, beings born of flame and shadow, guardians of the trial's true meaning. Kneeling before a swirling vortex of fire, Eira felt the heat wrap around her like a living cloak. The spirit took form, flickering between solid flame and elusive shadow, its presence both terrifying and mesmerizing. A voice crackled through the blaze, a language older than stone and ash. Visions flooded Eira's mind, glimpses of ancestors who had walked through fire, their faces marked by pain and triumph. She saw the kingdom's founders, their blood mingling with the molten earth, forging a pact with the fire that was not merely symbolic, but sacred and binding. The fire revealed that the trial was more than a test of survival. It was a call from the very essence of Eira, a living force that chose its champion not solely by blood but by spirit, by courage, by the willingness to embrace both destruction and renewal. Eira's heart pounded as the visions faded, leaving her with a profound clarity. Her mysterious birthmark, once a source of doubt and fear, now felt like a flame ignited within her soul, a legacy intertwined with the kingdom's fate. She rose, the cavern's heat pressing against her skin like a second heartbeat. Lady Myron stepped forward, her steady hand resting on Eira's shoulder. "You carry the fire not just in your blood, but in your spirit. The trial is only the beginning. Outside, the volcanic winds howled, stirring embers that rose like stars against the darkening sky. Eira inhaled deeply, the weight of destiny settling upon her shoulders but tempered by a newfound hope. The journey back would be no less treacherous, but she was no longer the uncertain blacksmith's daughter. She was the flame reborn, ready to face the trials that awaited, to lead Eira through its darkest hour and into the light of a new dawn. With a final glance at the glowing heart of the volcano, Eira stepped forward, each footfall a drumbeat of resolve. The fire within her burned brighter than ever, a beacon in the encroaching night. The kingdom's fate was hers to forge, and she would meet it head-on, unyielding as the molten core beneath her feet. As they descended, Lady Myron's voice was but a whisper carried on the wind. The ember crown awaits its true bearer. And Eira knew, without doubt, that she was ready to claim it. But beyond the shadows, unseen eyes watched the journey's end, and the flames of rebellion flickered ever brighter, promising that the hardest trials were yet to come. The first light of dawn cast a fiery glow over the volcanic plains of Eira, as if the very heart of the earth had ignited in anticipation of the coming storm. Eira stood upon a ridge overlooking the blackened battlefield, her amber eyes scanning the horizon where the banners of her forces fluttered against the dark smoke that coiled like serpents above the shattered land. The air was thick with the scent of scorched earth and molten rock, a reminder that this was a kingdom forged in flame, now consumed by it. Below, the sound of war drums echoed, a grim cadence that sent a shiver through the ranks. Eira's voice rose above the tumult, steady and clear. "Hold the line! For Eira! For our people!" Her words were met with a unified cry, their fierce hope igniting a spark of courage in every heart. The ground trembled as Lord Kaelin's forces surged forward, their armor clinking and weapons flashing in the morning light. The first clash was a violent symphony of steel and flame. Eira wove through the chaos, her senses heightened, every movement purposeful. She felt the familiar warmth of the fire within her, a steady ember keeping doubt at bay. Thane fought by her side, his sword cutting arcs through the enemy ranks. His eyes met hers briefly, a silent vow of loyalty passing between them. Yet even in the heat of battle, Eira noticed the wariness etched in his features, a man burdened by the weight of war and the ghosts of his past. The volcanic terrain offered both peril and advantage. Rivers of molten lava carved unpredictable paths, their glowing trails illuminating the night even as ash drifted down like snow. Eira's forces used the fissures to their favor, setting traps and ambushes that slowed Lord Kaelin's advance. But the enemy was relentless, fueled by a hatred that burned as fiercely as the flames that crowned the kingdom. Amid the cacophony, a sharp cry split the air. Eira's heart clenched as she saw a young soldier collapse, a crimson stain blossoming across his chest. She rushed to his side, the heat from the nearby lava casting eerie shadows over his pale face. His eyes, wide with pain and fear, locked onto hers. "For Eira," he whispered before his hand went limp in hers. Tears pricked at her eyes, but she blinked them away. There was no time for grief, not yet. The cost of leadership was heavy, and every loss carved a deeper mark on her soul. She pressed forward, her resolve hardening like steel forged in fire. The battle raged on, a brutal dance of death and defiance. Lord Kaelin appeared amidst his troops, his cold steel blue eyes cutting through the smoke. His presence was a dark flame, threatening to consume all that Eira had fought for. The two leaders seemed locked in an unspoken contest, each fueling the other's fury. Suddenly, an explosion of fire erupted to Eira's right, a volley of flaming arrows set ablaze by the dry ash. Thane shouted a warning as Kaelin's mercenaries launched a deadly ambush, their battle cries mingling with the roar of the volcano itself. The air was thick with choking smoke and flying embers, turning the battlefield into a hellish inferno. Thane rallied the scattered defenders, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Hold fast! We cannot let them break through!" With a fierce charge, he led a desperate counterattack, cutting through the enemy lines with a grim determination. Eira found herself at the heart of the conflict, wielding her fiery powers to shield her comrades and strike down foes. Flames danced at her fingertips, bending to her will as she shaped them into barriers and blades. But even as the fire obeyed her command, her heart ached for the cost of this war, the lives extinguished like candles in the wind. As night fell, the battlefield quieted, leaving a landscape scarred and smoldering. Eira retreated with her wary forces to their encampment, where the wounded lay beneath makeshift tents. Lady Myron moved among them, her silver hair glowing faintly in the flickering torchlight. She tended to the injured with a calm grace, her eyes reflecting the flickering flames as she whispered ancient prayers. Eira approached her, the weight of the day pressing down like the ash-laden sky. "How do we endure this, when so much burns around us?" Lady Myron's gaze softened. "Fire destroys, but it also purifies. From ashes new life will rise. You must hold on to that truth, Eira. Leadership is not just strength, but the courage to endure and rebuild." The Queen nodded, drawing a deep breath as the embers of hope flickered within her. Tomorrow the war would continue, and with it, the fate of Eira. But for tonight, beneath the starless sky heavy with ash, she found a moment of fragile peace. The flames of battle had scorched the earth, but they had also forged a leader tempered by fire and loss. Eira knew the path ahead was perilous, but her resolve burned brighter than ever. The kingdom's future depended on it. And so, as the volcanic winds whispered promises of change, Eira prepared to face the trials, still to come undaunted, unyielding, and aflame with the hope of a new dawn. The war tent was heavy with smoke and tension. Flickering firelight threw long, trembling shadows across the worn maps spread out on the broad wooden table. Eira leaned over, her amber eyes sharp yet shadowed with fatigue, tracing the lines of troop movements and supply routes. Around her, her closest advisors exchanged quiet words, but beneath their faces lay a shared unease, a sense that the fragile momentum they had gained was about to be shattered. Thane stood close by, his broad frame a steady presence. His dark hair was tousled from days on the front lines, and his guarded smile was absent. "We need better scouts," he muttered, his voice low but urgent. "Kaelin's forces won't wait for us to strike first. They'll come at us when we're most vulnerable." Eira nodded, the weight of leadership pressing down on her chest like an anvil. "We can't afford missteps," she said, voice steady but laced with worry. "Each mistake costs lives." Lady Myron, graceful even in the dim light, stepped forward, her silver hair catching the firelight like molten silver. "The enemy grows desperate," she warned, eyes glowing faintly. "They will strike where we least expect." The council dispersed into whispered debates, but Eira's gaze was drawn to a figure lingering at the edge of the tent, a trusted ally whose loyalty had never faltered. Or so she believed. Under the cover of darkness, far from the flickering fires of the rebel camp, that ally met with shadowy figures loyal to Lord Kaelin. The air was thick with the acrid scent of sulfur and the distant rumble of the volcano, a grim soundtrack to the cold exchange of secrets and coins that sealed a fatal pact. The betrayal was complete. At dawn, the ash-choked sky bore witness to the chaos unleashed. Eira's forces, caught unawares, scrambled as the ambush tore through their ranks like wildfire. The roar of battle merged with the crackling of flames and the anguished cries of the fallen. Smoke curled into the sky, mingling with the volcanic ash, painting a grim portrait of devastation. Eira fought fiercely amidst the turmoil, her fiery hair a beacon of defiance even as she took wounds that burned deeper than the fire's sting. Thane was at her side, his sword flashing through the smoky haze as he covered her retreat. Every step away from the battlefield was a victory and a loss intertwined. The narrow volcanic ravine that led away from the carnage was suffocatingly hot, the glow of lava flows casting a hellish light on their path. Exhaustion tugged at Eira's limbs, but her spirit burned with unyielding resolve. "We will rise from these ashes," she vowed, each word a spark against the darkness. Yet trust had been shattered, alliances fractured. The betrayal cut deeper than any blade, sowing seeds of doubt that threatened to consume her cause from within. As she and her remaining loyalists regrouped, the question lingered: who could she truly trust in a kingdom where flames could both forge and destroy? But even in retreat, Eira's eyes burned with fierce determination. The trial was far from over. The fire within her was not yet spent, and the ember crown still awaited its rightful bearer. The path ahead was perilous, shadowed by treachery and bloodshed. Yet, amid the ruins of trust and hope, a new fire kindled, one born of resilience, courage, and the undying will to reclaim what was hers by fate and by flame. As the echoes of battle faded into the distant roar of the volcano, Eira whispered to the night, "This is not the end. It is the beginning of the true trial."
The dim light of the forge flickered against the walls as Eira sat silently, her fingers tracing the familiar, flame-shaped birthmark that curled like a delicate scar upon her wrist. The embers cast dancing shadows, illuminating the soot-streaked planes of her face, eyes glowing amber with a mixture of curiosity and unease. Across from her, Lady Myron's silver hair shimmered faintly in the hearth's glow, her voice low and reverent as she spoke. "The trial of flames is older than the memory of any living soul," she began, "not merely a test of courage or bloodline, but a covenant between our kingdom and the fire spirits themselves." Eira leaned forward, captivated by the fire priestess's words. "What kind of covenant?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Lady Myron's eyes, faintly aglow in the dim light, met Eira's. "Long ago, when Eira was young, the flames chose its protectors, not just rulers, but guardians of balance. Your mother was one such guardian, her bloodline woven with the ancient fire magic that sustains our land." The revelation struck Eira with the weight of a molten boulder. She had always suspected her lineage was different, but to hear it confirmed and linked to her mysterious birthmark was both a balm and a burden. Later that evening, Eira sought out her father in the forge, where the scent of molten metal and ash hung thick in the air. Garrick paused his hammering, wiping sweat from his brow as he regarded his daughter with a mixture of pride and sorrow. "There are truths I kept from you," he confessed quietly, voice roughened by years of labor and silence. "Your mother was not just a woman of the forge, but of noble blood tied to the very heart of Eira's ancient rights. I swore to protect you from those who would seek to use that legacy for their own gain." Eira's heart tightened. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because knowledge is a flame," Garrick said, "and it can both warm and burn. I wanted you to forge your own path, free from the chains of expectation. But now the fire has chosen you, and that path must be embraced." Days passed as Lady Myron guided Eira through forgotten texts and rituals, revealing the true nature of the trial of flames. The ceremony was not a mere test of survival, but a binding rite that linked the chosen ruler's soul to the kingdom's fiery spirit. With each lesson, Eira felt the flames within her stir, an ancient power awakening in tandem with newfound knowledge. One night, alone atop a volcanic ridge, Eira gazed out over the molten horizon. The sky blazed in hues of molten gold and crimson, the land beneath trembling with the heartbeat of the earth itself. The wind carried the scent of sulfur and ash, a reminder of the volatile power that shaped her home and her destiny. She clenched her fists, resolve hardening like cooled lava. "I am both forge and flame," she whispered to the night. I will carry this burden and this power not as a pawn of tradition, but as a queen who forges her own fate. But as the fire danced in her eyes, so too did the shadows lengthen. Hidden forces stirred in the court, uneasy with the shifting tides of power and the secrets that threatened to ignite the kingdom's fragile peace. Eira knew that the path ahead would demand more than courage. It would require sacrifice, wisdom, and the strength to face not only her enemies, but the truths buried deep within her own heart. In the quiet sanctuary of the temple, Lady Myron's final confession echoed in Eira's mind. "I was once chosen to guard the flame's secret," the priestess admitted, voice tinged with regret. "And now that duty passes to you. The balance of Eira depends on your strength and your compassion." With the ashes of the past settling around her, Eira breathed deeply, feeling the pulse of fire within, ready to embrace the legacy that would define not just her reign, but the fate of the volcanic kingdom itself. As dawn bled into the sky, the first spark of a new era flickered to life, one forged in fire, tempered by truth, and destined to blaze a path through the shadows of history. But even as hope kindled in her heart, a chilling question lingered in the air. How long before the flames of rebellion reignited? And what price would she pay to protect the fragile peace she had sworn to uphold? The forge was no longer just her home, it was the crucible of her destiny, and the ember crown awaited its true bearer. The forge's heat pressed against Eira's skin like a living thing, warm and relentless. She lifted the hammer once more, the metal glowing orange beneath her steady gaze. Each strike sent a shower of sparks into the air, the rhythmic clang echoing in the cavernous workshop like a heartbeat. Sweat traced rivulets down her soot-streaked face, mixing with the grime and firelight that danced in her amber eyes. This was no longer just the forge of her father. It had become the crucible of her resolve. Outside, the volcanic winds whispered through the narrow streets of Eira's fortress, carrying the scent of ash and molten rock. News of renewed alliances had spread, bolstering the morale of those loyal to Eira. Yet, with every victory came the shadow of Lord Kaelin's looming threat. The weight of leadership pressed on her, an invisible mantle heavier than any crown forged by mortal hands. In the war room, the flicker of torchlight revealed Thane's furrowed brow as he paced silently, his broad shoulders tense beneath the weight of his armor. Eira watched him from the threshold, her fiery hair catching the flames, a beacon in the dimness. "You've been quiet," she said softly, stepping forward. The clink of armor was sharp in the stillness. Thane stopped, meeting her gaze with a guarded smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Quiet before the storm," he murmured. "There are things I haven't told you, doubts I can't shake." Eira's brow knitted in concern. "Then tell me, Thane, this is no time for silence between us." He hesitated, then exhaled slowly, the tension easing just a fraction. "I worry I'm not enough, that my past will catch us unprepared. But I swear I'll stand by you, no matter what comes." She reached out, gripping his forearm firmly. "We'll face it together, every step of the way." Later, Lady Myron guided Eira through the shadowed halls of the ancient temple. The air was thick with incense, and the faint crackle of magical flames danced along the stone walls, illuminating cryptic symbols etched deep into the rock. Eira's footsteps echoed softly as she followed the silver-haired priestess, eyes wide with awe and curiosity. "The trial of flames is older than the kingdom itself," Lady Myron whispered, her voice reverent. "More than a test of fire, it is a bond between the chosen and the elemental spirit of Eira. You have been touched by something ancient, Eira. Something even the noble houses have forgotten." Eira's fingers brushed the glowing sigils, warmth pulsing beneath her touch. "What does it mean for me? For the kingdom? It means you carry the future and the past within your veins. But that power must be tempered with wisdom and strength." Under the twilight sky outside the fortress, Eira and Thane sparred in the training yard. The fading light cast long shadows across the cracked stone, firelight from nearby torches flickering over their determined faces. Their blades clashed in sharp, synchronized movements, each strike a conversation of trust and challenge. "You've grown stronger," Thane admitted between breaths, a spark of admiration in his voice. Eira smiled, her amber eyes gleaming with renewed hope. "So have you. We were ready." As night deepened, they paused, the silence between them filled with unspoken promises and the steady rhythm of their beating hearts. The path ahead was fraught with danger, but together they would forge a future from the embers of the past. Back in the forge, Eira paused her hammering to gaze into the flames, searching for answers in their flickering depths. The fire no longer scared her, it spoke to her, a wild, untamed force she was beginning to understand. With each passing day, she grew more certain that her survival of the trial was only the beginning. The real battle was just beginning, and she would need every ounce of strength, courage, and wisdom to face it. Outside, the volcanic rumble reminded her that Vera itself was alive beneath her feet, an unforgiving land shaped by fire and fury. The Ember Crown was no mere symbol. It was a promise to protect, to endure, and to transform. Eira drew a deep breath, the scent of smoke and molten rock filling her lungs. Tomorrow the war would continue. But tonight, she was forging not just weapons, but a future. The flames within her burned fierce and steady, lighting the way forward. And in the shadows, old enemies watched and waited, their own fires ready to ignite. The coming days would test her like never before. But Eira was ready to meet the challenge, one strike at a time. The future of Vera was being forged anew, and its fate rested in the hands of the blacksmith's daughter, who had become a queen. As the first light of dawn crept behind the jagged volcanic peaks, Eira stood atop the fortress walls, her eyes tracing the horizon where ash and sky blurred into a fiery haze. The kingdom stirred below, restless but hopeful. Beside her, Thane approached silently, his presence a steady anchor. "Today we move forward," she said, voice low but resolute. He nodded, the weight of their shared burdens reflected in his gaze. Together. The forge fire had kindled more than metal, it had ignited a spark of revolution, a promise of change. And as the embers glowed softly in the morning light, Eira knew that the true forging of the future was only just beginning. The first light of dawn spilled over the jagged peaks of Vera, casting a molten glow across the scarred landscape below. Eira stood at the crest of a hill, the bitter wind tugging at her soot-streaked cloak and lifting strands of her fiery hair. Before her stretched the smoldering remains of a battlefield, where the echoes of clashing steel and anguished cries had faded into a haunting silence. The air was thick with the scent of ash and singed earth, a grim reminder of the cost already paid. Her amber eyes traced the blackened ruins where the enemy forces had entrenched themselves, a strategic stronghold vital to controlling the southern passes of the kingdom. Losing it had been a blow not only to their military strength, but to the fragile hope kindling among her followers. Yet, as the flames of war flickered still in her soul, Eira felt the familiar blaze of determination ignite anew. Beside her, Thane shifted uneasily, his dark eyes scanning the horizon. "We can't waste time," he said, voice low but urgent. "Lord Kaelin's forces will regroup quickly. If we don't act now, the rebellion will falter before it truly begins." Eira nodded, her thoughts already weaving through the complexities of battle strategies and political consequences. "We will strike at first light. But we must be precise, our forces are smaller, and we cannot afford reckless losses." The campaign to reclaim the stronghold was more than a mere military maneuver. It was a test of her leadership, a crucible in which her ideals would be forged or broken. She had learned much from Lady Myron's ancient teachings and the harsh lessons of court politics, but the battlefield demanded a different kind of wisdom, one of swift decisions and hard sacrifices. In the days that followed, Eira's command tent became a hive of restless energy. As her commanders debated tactics, a new figure emerged from the shadows of uncertainty: Jarek, a seasoned mercenary captain known for his ruthlessness and unpredictable loyalties. His arrival was met with murmurs of skepticism among Eira's trusted circle. But the queen understood the necessity of such alliances in a fragmented kingdom. Their first meeting was tense, the air thick with unspoken challenges. Jarek's sharp eyes assessed her with a mixture of curiosity and caution. "You lead with fire in your veins," he remarked, a faint smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. "But fire can consume as easily as it illuminates." Eira met his gaze steadily. "Then it is a good thing I intend to control it, not be consumed." Over campfires and council meetings, their uneasy alliance began to shift. Conversations once guarded softened into exchanges of mutual respect, and beneath the harsh exterior of the mercenary, Eira glimpsed a man shaped by hardship yet yearning for purpose beyond gold and bloodshed. But the path was far from smooth. Thane, ever protective and pragmatic, voiced his concerns about trusting Jarek's mercenaries. Heated debates erupted in the war tent, each argument crackling with the tension of clashing loyalties and philosophies. One evening, as the stars shimmered coldly above the volcanic peaks, Eira sought solitude by a flickering fire outside the encampment. Jarek approached silently, settling beside her. "You carry the weight of all these lives," he said quietly. "It's a burden few could bear without breaking." She glanced at him, the firelight catching the scars etched across his face. "Sometimes I wonder if bearing it means losing myself in the flames." He nodded thoughtfully. "Then perhaps it's not about surviving the fire unscathed, but what you become as it shapes you." Their conversation lingered in the night air, a fragile thread of trust weaving between them amid the uncertainty of war. The days pressed on with relentless urgency. Eira led her forces through treacherous volcanic passes and scorched plains, each step forward shadowed by the threat of ambush or betrayal. The cost of victory weighed heavily, casualties mounted, and the cries of the wounded stirred a fierce protectiveness within her. In a moment of quiet after a brutal skirmish, Eira knelt beside a fallen soldier, her hands steady despite the blood that stained her fingers. "Rest now," she whispered, voice trembling but resolute. "Your sacrifice will not be forgotten." Her resolve hardened. This war was not just a fight for territory but a battle for the soul of Eira itself. Yet, as they reclaimed the stronghold, victory was tinged with the bitter knowledge that every gain came with a price. The alliance with Jarek's mercenaries held, but the underlying tensions hinted at challenges still to come. Eira's leadership was evolving, no longer the uncertain girl who had walked through fire, but a queen tempered by hardship, embodying both flame and compassion. As the sun dipped behind the volcanic peaks, casting long shadows over the battered land, Eira stood once more atop the reclaimed walls. The kingdom was far from healed, the flames of rebellion still flickering in many hearts. But on this burning path, she had taken a decisive step forward, not just as a ruler, but as a beacon of hope amid the ashes. Her journey was far from over. The fire within her blazed brighter than ever, and with each challenge, she would learn what it truly meant to lead a kingdom forged in flame. And somewhere in the shifting shadows of war, new alliances and deeper bonds awaited, promising both salvation and heartbreak. Eira's story was just beginning, and the path ahead burned with possibilities unknown. The ash fell like a mournful rain over the shattered plains of Eira, blanketing the bloodied earth in a grey shroud. Eira stood atop a jagged ridge, her fiery red hair whipping around her soot-streaked face as her amber eyes scanned the battlefield below. The relentless clash of steel rang out like a grim symphony, punctuated by the anguished cries of the wounded and the guttural shouts of commanders trying to rally their troops. Smoke billowed from overturned carts and burning huts, casting flickering shadows over the scattered bodies of soldiers and civilians alike. The scent of scorched wood and iron mingled with the coppery tang of blood, filling the air with a heavy, choking weight. Beside her, Thane's dark eyes narrowed, his jaw clenched tight as he surveyed the unfolding chaos. "They push hard at the western front," he murmured, voice low but urgent. "If we don't reinforce soon, we'll lose that ridge." Eira's gaze didn't waver. "Then we hold the line," she said quietly, the fire in her voice matching the flames consuming the valley below. "We cannot let Kaelin's forces break through. If they do, this rebellion dies here." Thane's glance flicked toward her, the faintest hint of a smile touching his lips despite the grim surroundings. "Your courage is what holds us together, Eira. But courage alone won't win this war. We need strategy, allies, and sometimes sacrifices." She swallowed hard, the weight of his words settling heavily in her chest. The brutal truth of leadership had never been more apparent. Each decision she made would ripple through the lives of countless people, and the burden of those choices threatened to crush her spirit. Later that evening, beneath the flickering torchlight of the war chamber, Eira sat surrounded by her most trusted advisors. Lady Myron's silver hair caught the firelight as she spoke in measured tones, weaving ancient wisdom into the cold calculus of war. Jarek, the mercenary captain, leaned forward, his scarred face shadowed and grim. "The nobles still waver," Jarek said, voice rough like gravel. "Many doubt your claim. Some outright refuse to fight under your banner. We need a decisive victory to turn the tide." Eira met his gaze steadily. "Then we'll give them that victory. But not at the cost of our people. I will not order slaughter where it can be avoided." Murmurs rippled around the room. Thane shifted, his voice cutting through the tension. "War is never clean, Eira. Mercy is a luxury we may not afford." She met his eyes, understanding the conflict within him, the tension between loyalty to her and the harsh realities of war. "I carry that burden with me," she said softly. "But I will not become the monster they say I am." The days that followed tested Eira in ways she had never imagined. On the front lines, she moved among her soldiers, tending to the wounded with trembling hands. The metallic scent of blood and the roar of nearby fires a constant reminder of the stakes. She saw fear in their eyes, the same fear that gnawed at her heart. Yet, in their faces, she also saw hope that she could lead them through the darkness. During a lull in the fighting, Eira found herself standing beside a smoldering campfire, the heat a small comfort against the cold night air. She stared into the flames, searching for answers in their flickering dance. Memories of her father's forge stirred deep within her, a reminder of the resilience forged in fire. The mysterious birthmark on her arm, shaped like a flame, pulsed faintly, a symbol of the destiny she had reluctantly embraced. Suddenly, the sharp crack of a twig snapped her from her reverie. Thane appeared at her side, his broad frame silhouetted against the darkened sky. "You can't carry this alone," he said quietly. "Let us bear the weight with you." Eira nodded, a bittersweet smile touching her lips. "Together," she whispered. "We'll see this through, whatever it takes." But the rebellion's flames were spreading fast, and with each passing day, the line between friend and foe blurred. Rumors of betrayal seeped through the ranks, and the shadow of Lord Kaelin loomed ever larger. His cold, steel-blue eyes seemed to watch her every move, a sinister reminder of the relentless opposition she faced. Their inevitable confrontation drew closer, with every battle an inferno that would decide not only the fate of the kingdom, but the soul of its people. As the sun set behind the volcanic peaks, casting the world in blood-red hues, Eira steeled herself for the trials yet to come. The flames of rebellion burned hotter than ever, and she would need all her strength, courage, and compassion to wield them without being consumed. And as the night deepened, a chilling question echoed in her mind: could she remain the leader her people needed without losing herself in the fire? The air hung heavy with the scent of burning earth and molten rock as dusk settled over the volcanic ridge. Eira stood alone at the precipice, the crimson glow from the rivers of lava below casting flickering shadows across her soot-streaked skin. Her fiery red hair whipped in the sharp wind, flames seeming to dance in her bright amber eyes. Around her, the kingdom of Eira lay tense and raw, caught in the uneasy pause before a storm. The civil war had reached a fever pitch, and the final confrontation loomed like the searing heat beneath her feet. Behind her, the war camp buzzed with restless energy. Soldiers sharpened blades, whispered rumors, and prepared for the battle that would decide the kingdom's future. Yet amid the chaos, Eira felt a quiet strength swell inside her, a connection to the fire that had chosen her, a power she was only beginning to understand. This strength was more than flame. It was the hope and courage of her people, the bond of loyalty forged through hardship and trust. Her thoughts were interrupted by the approach of Thane. His broad shoulders and dark hair were silhouetted against the fading light, and his usual quick, guarded smile was tempered by concern. "The nobles grow restless," he said quietly, his voice low. Lord Kaelan tightens his grip, rallying more houses to his cause. "We can't afford to falter now." Eira nodded, her gaze never leaving the molten rivers below. "We won't. We have to show them that the flames choose more than bloodline, that strength comes from the fire within." They moved together toward the War Council chamber, where Lady Myron awaited. The fire priestess's silver hair shimmered in the torchlight, and her eyes glowed faintly, reflecting the ancient wisdom she carried. Around the heavy stone table, maps of the kingdom lay spread, marked with shifting alliances and troop positions. "The intelligence we've gathered," Lady Myron began, her voice steady, "reveals fractures within Lord Kaelan's ranks. Some nobles question his ruthlessness, others fear the war's cost. We must exploit these divisions before the final battle." Thane's expression darkened. "But can we trust those who waver? Betrayal could come from any side, even within our own circle." Eira's jaw tightened. "We have no choice but to be vigilant. Trust must be earned and loyalty tested." As the council debated strategies, distant sounds cut through the night, the sharp clang of swords and the guttural shouts of mercenaries. Jorik's men, ever unpredictable, had initiated a skirmish against the camp's outer defenses. The clash echoed against the volcanic rock, a harsh reminder that danger lurked even before the main battle. Eira's heart quickened with adrenaline and anxiety, but she forced herself to steady her breath. "Prepare the defenses," she ordered. "We will not be caught unawares." Later, away from prying eyes, Eira sought solace by the bonfire that burned fiercely at the camp's center. The flames roared and crackled, sending sparks into the night sky like fleeting stars. She knelt beside the fire, her amber eyes reflecting the dancing light. Drawing deep breaths, she felt the warmth seep into her bones, the fire's energy coursing through her veins. Memories of her father's forge came unbidden, the steady hammering of metal, the glow of embers, the comforting heat that had been her childhood's sanctuary. Now, that fire was a part of her, a force to wield not only against her enemies but also to inspire and protect her people. "You carry the flame well," a voice said softly behind her. Lady Myron stepped into the circle of light, her presence gentle yet commanding. Eira looked up, determination hardening her features. "I must. For Vera, for all who believe in a future beyond bloodlines and old wars." Lady Myron nodded approvingly. "The Inferno's edge is near. Your trial is not only of fire, but of spirit. Remember, true power lies not in destruction, but in the courage to forge anew." As the night deepened, Eira rose, the fire's glow illuminating her resolute face. Tomorrow would bring the reckoning. The fate of Vera would be decided on the edge of the Inferno, where flames would test not only her body, but the very essence of her will. She turned back toward the camp, every step echoing with the weight of destiny. Allies and enemies alike moved in shadows, their intentions veiled but their ambitions clear. In the heart of the volcanic kingdom, the final act was about to begin, one that would burn away the past and shape the future. And Eira was ready to face it all. The molten core of the volcano pulsed like the beating heart of the kingdom itself, a searing furnace of molten rock and incandescent flame. Eira stood at the edge of this infernal abyss, the trial of destiny looming before her in its most primal form. The air was thick and heavy, charged with the scent of sulfur and the relentless crackle of fire licking at the cavern walls. Her skin prickled with heat. But it was not the flames alone that stirred her nerves, it was the weight of everything they represented. Lady Myron stood behind her, a calm and steady presence amid the roaring chaos. Her silver hair shimmered faintly in the torchlight, eyes glowing with a quiet fire of their own. "Remember Eira," she whispered, voice soft but resolute. "The flames do not merely test your flesh. They reveal your soul. Trust in yourself and in the fire that has chosen you." Eira nodded, inhaling deeply as she took her first step forward. The ground beneath her feet glowed with heat, the very earth alive with molten fury. Each step was a dance with danger, the flames licking at her ankles but never searing her skin. The trial was more than endurance. It was communion, a dialogue between her spirit and the elemental fire that had crowned her. As she ventured deeper, the heat wrapped around her like a living thing, pressing against her resolve. Then, as if summoned by her thoughts, the flames before her shifted and twisted, forming shapes and images that flickered and danced with eerie clarity. In the heart of the fire, Eira saw the face of her mother, soft and resolute, eyes brimming with sacrifice. The vision showed a woman cloaked in flames, standing between warring factions to protect her child, the very act sealing a legacy hidden from the world. Tears mingled with sweat as Eira reached out, the fire's warmth both comforting and searing. The birthmark on her wrist flared brilliantly, a flame-shaped sigil blazing against her skin, confirming the truth she had long feared and hoped for. Her bloodline was not an accident, but a thread woven through generations of rulers, a secret kept to protect her until the time was right. The vision shifted and the flames darkened, coalescing into the formidable figure of Lord Kalen Voss. His cold steel blue eyes bore into hers, a challenge and a threat wrapped in flame. "You are an imposter," his voice echoed through the cavern, a spark that dares to ignite a blaze without rightful claim. Eira squared her shoulders, the fire echoing her defiance. "I am more than blood," she answered, voice steady and unwavering. "I am the flame that burns for all Veira." A fierce battle of wills ensued, the firestorm around her swirling with their conflict. Eira felt the heat press in, the temptation to falter lurking like smoke in her mind. But with each breath, she drew strength from the forge of her past, the lessons of her father's anvil, the guidance of Lady Myron, and the loyalty of those who believed in her. The flames, once threatening, now seemed to embrace her, a symbol of both trial and triumph. When the visions faded and the heat began to recede, Eira found herself standing alone, sweat and soot streaking her face, her heart pounding with a fierce, new resolve. The trial was over, but its consequences rippled through her very being. She was no longer just the blacksmith's daughter. She was the rightful bearer of the Ember Crown, her path illuminated by the fire's eternal light. Yet, as she emerged from the volcano's core, the weight of her destiny settled heavily upon her shoulders. The kingdom's fate, the fragile balance between tradition and change, all hinged on the choices she would now make. Would she embrace the flames of rebellion and forge a new future? Or would the fire consume her before she could lead her people to dawn? The trial had shown her the truth, but it had also revealed the depths of the challenges ahead. Eira's journey was far from over, it was only just beginning. And as the sun rose over the volcanic peaks of Veira, casting long shadows over the land, the promise of a new era flickered uncertainly in the fiery horizon. The sky above Veira was a tempest of molten ash and fiery embers, casting a hellish glow over the volcanic battlefield where the kingdom's fate would be decided. Eira stood at the forefront of her forces, her fiery hair whipping in the sulphurous wind, her amber eyes blazing with a fierce resolve. Around her, the ground trembled beneath the roar of the volcano, the air thick with smoke and the acrid scent of burning stone. The clash began with a thunderous roar as Lord Kalen Voss's mercenary forces surged forward, their steel flashing like lightning against the darkened sky. Eira's soldiers met them with equal ferocity, swords singing and shields pounding in a cacophony of war. Flames licked the edges of the battlefield, the heat searing flesh and steel alike, turning the earth into a blistering forge of conflict. Amidst the chaos, Thane fought fiercely by Eira's side, his blade cutting down foes with practiced precision. His quick, guarded smile appeared even in the midst of battle, a reminder of the loyalty that had never wavered. Lady Myron moved through the ranks, her silver hair catching the flickering light as she chanted ancient prayers, calling upon the fire spirits to protect their queen. But the battle's tide shifted with the sting of betrayal. A trusted ally, once thought loyal, emerged from the shadows with a dagger poised to strike. The gleam of the blade in the firelight was a cruel echo of the hope it shattered. The betrayal sent ripples of confusion and despair through Eira's forces, fracturing their unity at a critical moment. Eira felt the sting of the betrayal deep in her heart, yet she steeled herself against the despair. Forced into a tactical retreat, Eira led her remaining troops towards the volcanic heart, the very core of the Trial of Flames. There, within the labyrinth of molten rock and searing heat, she confronted Lord Kalan in a final, brutal showdown. The cavern's walls pulsed with the rhythm of the earth's fury, lava flows casting eerie shadows that danced like specters around them. Their battle was not only of steel and fire, but of words and wills. Kalan, with his cold steel blue eyes burning with hatred, accused Eira of being an illegitimate usurper, a threat to the kingdom's sacred traditions. Eira, her voice steady yet charged with emotion, revealed the truths she had uncovered about the trial's deeper purpose. The bloodlines that were not as pure as the nobles claimed, and the need for a new era. The duel raged, sparks flying as their blades collided, the heat of the volcano mirroring the intensity of their conflict. Each strike was a test of endurance and conviction, a battle for the soul of Eira. At last, with a decisive move, Eira disarmed Kalan, her blade poised at his throat. But instead of delivering a fatal blow, she offered mercy, an act that stunned all who witnessed it. Kalan's defeat marked the end of the Old Order's tyranny, but the cost was high. The battlefield outside lay smoldering, the ashes of war settling over the land like a heavy shroud. Eira stood alone amidst the ruins, the weight of leadership heavier than ever on her shoulders. Yet in her eyes burned a new fire, a fire of hope, resilience, and the promise of renewal. As the first light of dawn pierced the ash-laden sky, Eira raised her gaze to the horizon. The kingdom of Eira was scarred, but not broken. The ember crown was hers not just by flame, but by the strength of her spirit and the courage to forge a new path for her people. The story of fire, trial, and bloodlines was far from over, but a new chapter had begun. Her journey through the conflagration had tested every fiber of her being, revealing the kingdom's darkest truths and her own deepest fears. Yet it also revealed the unyielding light within a light that would guide Eira out of darkness and into a future forged by fire and hope. The flames of rebellion had been fierce, but from their ashes, a leader was born, ready to face whatever trials fate might bring next. And as the echoes of battle faded into silence, one question lingered in the charged air. Could a ruler born of fire truly unite a kingdom divided by blood and tradition? The answer would shape the legacy of the Ember Crown for generations to come. The air was thick with the scent of ash and damp earth, a stark reminder of the recent battles that had scarred the kingdom of Eira. Yet, as dawn broke over the volcanic horizon, a fragile light spilled across the shattered landscape, illuminating the first signs of renewal. Eira stood upon the balcony of the grand hall, her fiery hair catching the morning light, her amber eyes steady and resolute as they swept over the gathered crowd below. The faces before her bore the marks of hardship, smudges of soot, tired lines etched by grief and struggle, but within them flickered a cautious hope. She took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the Ember Crown settle heavily upon her brow. The war had left wounds not only in the land, but in the hearts of its people. Yet it was in this moment, standing at the crossroads of destruction and rebirth, that Eira found her true purpose. People of Eira, her voice rang clear, unwavering despite the tremor of emotion beneath. We stand together not as victors or the vanquished, but as survivors forged anew by fire. The flames tested us, the blood stained our soil, but from these ashes we will rise. Her words were met with a reverent silence, broken only by the distant rumble of the volcano, a constant reminder of the volatile land they called home. Eira's gaze softened as she continued, "I will not pretend that the cost has been small. Too many lives lost, too many hearts broken. But I vow to lead with strength and compassion, to bridge the divides that have splintered our kingdom. Together, we will build a future worthy of the Ember Crown." Below, whispers of agreement spread through the crowd, tentative and fragile like the first sparks of a dying flame rekindled. Among the people stood Thane, his broad shoulders squared, dark eyes reflecting both relief and lingering doubt. Beside him, Lady Myron watched with measured approval, her silver hair shimmering softly in the morning light. Even Garrick, Eira's father, who had journeyed from the forge to witness this pivotal moment, nodded with quiet pride. Later, in the soft glow of the ruined forge, where so many of Eira's earliest memories had been forged alongside steel, she worked side by side with Garrick. The rhythmic clang of hammer on anvil echoed through the stillness, a heartbeat of resilience. Each strike was a testament to the kingdom's enduring spirit, a symbol that even broken things could be reforged stronger than before. "The forge heals what fire has broken," Garrick said gruffly, wiping sweat from his brow. "Just as you will heal this land, Eira." She smiled faintly, the soot on her skin mingling with tears she refused to shed. "It won't be easy, father. But I won't turn away from it." As days passed, the council chambers filled again with the voices of those committed to rebuilding Veira. Lady Myron's calm wisdom guided the discussions, her knowledge of ancient traditions weaving a thread of continuity through the turbulence. Thane's practical counsel tempered idealism with strategy, his loyalty to Eira unwavering despite the shadows of his own past. Together, they faced the daunting task of uniting fractured noble houses and common folk alike. Reforms were proposed, land redistributed, trade routes reopened, and laws rewritten to reflect a new vision of fairness and inclusion. Resistance was inevitable. Old grudges and fears clung stubbornly to the hearts of many. Yet Eira met dissent not with iron fist alone, but with open hand and listening ear, her leadership evolving into a delicate balance of firmness and empathy. Outside the city, the volcanic landscape bore witness to the slow but steady healing. Villagers cleared rubble, planting seeds in soil still warm from the earth's breath. Soldiers laid down arms, returning to homes rebuilt from the remnants of war. The smoke that once signaled destruction now rose gently, a sign of renewal rather than ruin. In quiet moments, Eira often found herself drawn back to the flames that had chosen her. She would watch the fire dance, searching its depths for answers and strength. The trial of flames had been only the beginning, not just a test of survival, but a forging of identity. As queen, she carried not only the crown, but the promise of transformation. Yet beneath the surface of hope lay a persistent unease. The scars of war were not all visible, and old enemies still lurked in shadows. The question remained, could the ember of peace truly grow into an enduring flame, or would the volatile heart of Veira ignite once more? As the sun set behind the volcanic peaks, casting long shadows over the land, Eira stood alone on the balcony once more. The weight of her crown felt lighter now, tempered by the bonds she had forged and the future she was determined to shape. For Veira, she whispered, "I will keep the flame alive." And with that vow, the kingdom held its breath, poised on the edge of a new dawn, one born not from the fury of fire, but from its quiet strength and enduring warmth. The path ahead was uncertain, but Eira's resolve burned brighter than ever. The Ember Crown was no longer just a symbol of power. It was a beacon of hope for a land reborn. As night deepened, the first stars blinked into existence above the volcanic kingdom, silent witnesses to the fragile peace blossoming beneath their watchful gaze. The cavernous hall of the volcanic palace was alive with flickering torchlight that danced along walls carved from obsidian and basalt, casting long shadows that seemed to whisper of ancient secrets. Banners embroidered with the sigils of Veira's noble houses hung proudly, their colors muted under the fiery glow. The air was thick with the scent of burning cedar and smoldering incense, a fragrant homage to the flames that had decided the kingdom's fate. Eira stood at the heart of the hall, the murmurs of the gathered crowd rippling like a wave around her. Her fiery red hair was braided tightly, embers woven subtly through the strands, catching the light with every movement. She wore robes that blended the soot-streaked cloth of her blacksmith origins with the rich silks of nobility, symbolizing the bridge she embodied between two worlds. Her amber eyes reflected the flickering flames, steady and resolute amidst a sea of expectant faces. The ancient ember crown rested upon a pedestal before her, a masterpiece, wrought from volcanic glass and molten gold. Its surface warmed to the touch as if breathing with the fire itself. The crown's design was intricate, tongues of flame curled and lipped in precious metal, capturing both the destructive and purifying essence of Veira's heritage. This was the symbol of rulership, passed down through centuries where only those who survived the trial of flames could claim it. A hush fell as Eira stepped forward. Each footfall echoed with the weight of history as she reached out, fingers trembling only slightly, to grasp the crown. The warmth seeped into her skin, a pulse like a heartbeat aligning with her own, filling her with an ancient power and a new responsibility. The crowd held its breath, caught between reverence and disbelief, for she was the first to claim the crown from outside the noble bloodlines. From the side, Lady Myron's voice rose in a chant, ancient words weaving through the air like a protective flame. Her silver hair shimmered in the torchlight, and her glowing eyes held a depth of wisdom and mystery. The invocation was a plea to the fire spirits to bless Eira's reign and the fragile peace she promised. Thane stood close by, his broad shoulders squared, dark hair slightly tousled from the day's ceremonies. His eyes never left Eira, a silent vow of loyalty and protection shining in their depths. Their shared past, forged in the fires of childhood and struggle, lent a steady strength to the moment. As Eira lifted the ember crown and placed it upon her head, a murmur of awe swept through the assembly. This was not just a coronation. It was a declaration that the kingdom of Veira was stepping into a new age, one kindled by hope and tempered by the flames of trials endured. Yet beneath the surface, doubts lingered. Noble houses whispered in corners, their eyes sharp with suspicion or reluctant acceptance. The recent scars of civil war were still fresh, and the balance of power remained delicate. Could a blacksmith's daughter truly unite a kingdom fractured by tradition and ambition? The ceremony gave way to celebrations, music swelling through the halls, the scent of roasted meats, and spiced wine mingling with the ever-present smoke from the hearths. Eira moved among her people, her smile genuine but cautious, feeling the weight of every gaze, some hopeful, others skeptical. Later, standing on a balcony that overlooked the volcanic horizon, Eira gazed out as the sun dipped low, bathing the sky in molten shades of orange and red. The ground beneath her pulsed with the latent fury of the volcano, a reminder of the volatile power she now commanded. Beside her, Thane's voice was low and steady. "You carry more than a crown, Eira. You carry their hopes and their fears." She nodded, the wind tugging at her robes. "Then I must be both flame and shield, to burn away the old and protect what's worth saving." As the first stars blinked awake in the smoky sky, a sense of bittersweet resolve settled over her. This was only the beginning. The ember crown was a promise of renewal, of sacrifice, and of a future yet unwritten. But in the depths of her heart, a question lingered, unspoken and urgent. Could she truly forge a kingdom from ashes and flame? Or would the fires consume everything she held dear? The night deepened, and the flames of rebellion flickered in the distance, a reminder that the path ahead would be fraught with peril. Yet Eira stood tall, the warmth of the ember crown steady on her brow, ready to face whatever trials awaited in the fiery crucible of her reign. With one last breath of the smoke-tinged air, she turned back toward the hall to her people, her destiny, and the fragile hope of a new dawn for Veira. The Ember Crown was hers, and the kingdom would never be the same. The grand hall of Ember Palace was alive with murmurs, the air thick with anticipation and unease. The great chamber, normally a place of silent reverence for tradition, now pulsed with a restless energy as nobles and commoners alike awaited the queen's words. Eira stood at the dais, her fiery hair a vivid banner against the stone, her amber eyes reflecting the flickering torchlight as she prepared to speak. The weight of the crown pressed down on her, yet beneath it burned a fierce resolve. Today, she began, her voice steady, we stand at a crossroads. For too long, the flames that define Eira have been wielded only by those born into privilege. It is time to rekindle the spirit of our kingdom not through blood alone, but through justice and unity. Her proclamation sent ripples through the hall. She laid out her vision, the abolition of oppressive taxes on common folk, the establishment of a council where voices from every corner of the kingdom could be heard, and the creation of opportunities for all to contribute to Eira's future. The trial of flames chose me not for my birthright, but for my heart and will, she declared. I will be a queen for all, not just the few. A heavy silence followed, shattered by murmurs of disbelief and outrage from the noble faction. Lady Scylla, standing tall with her cold gaze fixed on Eira, stepped forward, her voice cutting through the clamor. These reforms threaten the very foundation of our society, she said, her tone laced with venom. Tradition is the fire that has kept Eira strong. To douse it is to invite chaos. Eira met her stare unflinchingly. Our traditions must serve the people, not enslave them, she replied firmly, the fire within her kindling anew. Change is the only true constant, and I will not let fear bind us to a broken past. The confrontation set the tone for the days that followed. Factions within the court mobilized, some openly defying the Queen's edicts, others cautiously aligning with her vision. In the shadows, political maneuvering intensified as old alliances fractured and new ones formed. Yet amidst the swirling storm, Eira found unexpected support. Thane remained steadfast at her side, his pragmatic counsel a steadying force. Together, they walked the palace corridors, planning strategies and mending fractures. One evening, in the warmth of the forge, a sanctuary that had once been her entire world, Eira and Thane shared a rare moment of respite. The glow of molten metal cast dancing shadows on their faces as they spoke quietly of the burdens they bore. Leadership is more than strength, Eira mused. It is the courage to face doubt and the will to endure sacrifice. Thane nodded, his usual guarded smile softening. You carry the fire of Eira. Not just the flame that burns, but the one that warms. Meanwhile, Lady Myron convened a secret council within the temple's quiet sanctum. Her silver hair shimmered in the torchlight as she shared ancient prophecies with trusted allies, words that spoke of a ruler who would unite the kingdom through transformation, not tradition. The flames choose not just by blood, but by spirit, she reminded them. Eira is that chosen one. These words bolstered the Queen's supporters, giving them hope against the rising tide of opposition. Yet Eira knew the path ahead was fraught with peril. Every reform she enacted was a spark that could ignite rebellion or revolution. But she would face it all with the fierce determination that had carried her from the forge to the throne. As the chapter closed, the kingdom of Eira stood on the brink of a new era, one forged in the fires of change, where the ancient and the new would clash to shape the future. Eira's voice echoed in the halls, we are the flame that will light the way forward. Together, we will endure. Outside the palace, the volcanic mountains loomed, their eternal fires a reminder that even the fiercest flames could birth new life. And so, beneath the glowing embers of a restless sky, the fires of change began to burn bright. The grand hall's tension thickened as Eira's reforms swept through the kingdom like wildfire. Noble houses debated fiercely, their voices a tumultuous chorus of fear and defiance. Rumors whispered through the marble corridors, some spoke of rebellion, others of secret negotiations. Yet amidst the unrest, commoners gathered, their eyes alight with hope, as they glimpsed a future where their voices might finally be heard. Lady Sulla's opposition crystallized into a formidable resistance, but cracks appeared within the noble ranks. Some, wary of endless strife, saw wisdom in Eira's vision. Among them, a few younger nobles, inspired by the Queen's courage, began to question the old order. These shifting alliances added new complexity to the political chessboard, forcing Eira and her council to adapt swiftly. In the quiet moments away from the court's claimer, Eira wrestled with the enormity of her task. The crown was heavier than ever, its weight a constant reminder of lives dependent on her choices. Yet every challenge steeled her resolve, every act of defiance a spark to kindle her fire. The heart of Eira beat strongest when its people stand united, she often reminded herself. Drawing strength from memories of her father's forge place, where raw elements were shaped into something enduring and beautiful. Now she must forge a kingdom anew. And so, beneath the ever-watchful gaze of the volcanoes, the fires of change blazed on, unpredictable, fierce, and full of promise. The chapter ended with whispers of an upcoming council session, where Eira would face her critics once more, the court holding its breath for what would come next. The ember glow of hope still burned, but shadows of doubt lingered, promising that the struggle for Eira's soul was far from over. The first light of dawn crept gently over the volcanic ridges surrounding Ember Keep, painting the sky in hues of molten gold and soft crimson. Eira stood alone on the expansive balcony that overlooked the vast kingdom of Eira, the air still heavy with the lingering scent of smoke and ash. Her amber eyes, sharp and steady, reflected the dawning light as if capturing the very essence of the flames that had chosen her. The volcanic kingdom stretched beneath her, its rugged landscape a constant reminder of the fiery trials that had shaped her journey. She breathed deeply, the cool morning air filling her lungs, mingling with the faint warmth radiating from the stone beneath her feet. The land was quiet now, the chaos of rebellion and war having given way to a fragile peace. Yet, beneath the calm surface, she felt the steady pulse of change, the simmering tensions that came with leadership. This peace, hard-won and delicate, was hers to protect. Turning from the balcony, Eira traced her fingers along the carved stone balustrade, a tactile connection to the legacy she now bore. The ember crown sat heavy on her brow, its molten gold cool but weighty with history and expectation. Unlike the rulers before her noble-born and steeped in tradition, she was forged from fire and forge alike, a blacksmith's daughter shaped by flame and fate. Her red hair, now streaked with silver strands, was a testament to the trials endured and the wisdom earned. Her footsteps echoed softly as she moved through the quiet halls of Ember Keep, the castle still adorned with banners bearing the newly unified sigil of Eira. The symbol, a phoenix rising from volcanic flames, was a vision of rebirth and resilience, much like her own story. Each step led her toward the forge chamber, a place of profound significance. It was here that her journey had begun, where soot and sweat had mingled in the heat of creation, and where she had first learned the language of fire. The forge was warm, the glow of embers casting dancing shadows on the stone walls. Eira approached the anvil, her hands resting gently upon its cool surface. The scent of burning wood and molten metal filled the air, evoking memories of her father's patient guidance and the steady rhythm of hammer on steel. Garrick, now aged but steadfast, stood nearby, his eyes reflecting quiet pride. "You carry the fire of our ancestors, Eira," he said softly, his voice roughened by years of toil. "But now you carry more than that. You carry the hope of Eira." Eira nodded, her heart heavy yet determined. "The forge shaped me, father, but it is the people I must now shape with care and strength." Her gaze drifted to the birthmark on her wrist, a flame etched in pale scar tissue, a reminder of the mysterious bloodline she had uncovered and the destiny she had embraced. The revelation of her noble heritage had shifted the political tides, yet it was her empathy for the common folk and her unyielding will that had truly won their allegiance. Later, in the council chamber, The flickering torchlight illuminated the faces of those gathered, Thane, ever vigilant and pragmatic, his dark eyes steady beneath a brow furrowed with concern. Lady Myron, serene yet sharp, her silver hair shimmering like liquid fire as she spoke with measured wisdom. The room was thick with the weight of decisions yet to be made, reforms to be enacted, and the delicate balance of power to be maintained. The wounds of war are deep, Lady Myron said, her voice calm but resolute. Healing will require more than peace treaties. It demands trust, understanding, and the courage to change ancient customs. Thane's gaze met Eira's. The nobles will resist, but the people hunger for hope. If you stand firm, they will follow. Eira considered their counsel, the flickering shadows playing across their faces like the flames she had come to command. Then we must be both fire and shield, she replied, a force to burn away the old grievances and a refuge for those seeking safety. The days that followed were filled with tireless efforts, decrees to bridge the divide between nobles and commoners, initiatives to rebuild shattered towns, and councils to integrate former adversaries into the new order. Resistance simmered beneath smiles and formal agreements. Progress was a slow, arduous flame rather than a raging inferno. Yet, each small victory kindled a growing warmth across Eira. Amid the challenges, Eira found moments of solace in simple rituals. She returned often to the forge, her hands steady as she shaped metal with the same care and precision she applied to her reign. The clang of hammer on anvil was a grounding heartbeat, a reminder of her roots and the resilience forged in fire. Garrick's presence was a balm to her soul, his steady support a precious constant in a world of shifting alliances. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the kingdom in a fiery glow, Eira walked through the bustling market square. The air was alive with the scents of spiced bread and fresh herbs, the laughter of children mingling with the murmur of hopeful voices. She paused, watching as a young blacksmith apprentice hammered at glowing metal, eyes bright with determination. A smile touched her lips. This was the legacy she sought to build, a future where fire was not only a trial but a source of life and renewal. Yet, even as peace settled, the embers of uncertainty glowed beneath the surface. Whispers of dissent lingered in shadowed corners, and old loyalties died hard. Eira knew her journey was far from over. The crown was not merely a symbol of power, but a mantle of responsibility that would test her at every turn. As night deepened, Eira returned to her chambers. She removed the ember crown, placing it gently on the polished wood of her desk. Her amber eyes reflected the flickering candlelight, steady and resolute. "This is only the beginning," she whispered to the quiet room. The flame of Eira must burn bright, not to consume, but to guide. Outside, the volcano loomed silent for now, but ever watchful. The kingdom rested beneath its shadow, cradled by fire and fate. And in the heart of it all stood Eira, the blacksmith's daughter turned queen, a living testament to the power of resilience, courage, and the enduring legacy of flame. The dawn beckoned a new era, uncertain yet filled with promise. And as the first light spread across the land, Eira stepped forward, ready to face whatever trials awaited with the strength of fire burning within her soul.